Have you ever sat across from someone who said all the right things, looked you in the eye, smiled at the right moments, but somehow you still felt completely unseen? So many women give and give, thinking love will be enough. They pour out their hearts, stay patient, show up over and over, only to be forgotten when it matters most, or worse, replaced by someone who didn't try half as hard. If you've ever wondered why your quiet strength seemed invisible, this video is for you. Because maybe, just maybe, the thing you thought made you forgettable is exactly what makes you unforgettable. Stay with me. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most grounded, mature, emotionally steady women are the ones who linger the longest in a man's heart. If you've ever been the woman who gave more than she received, like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment. I want to hear your story. You're not alone, and you're not wrong for loving deeply. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from defeat, but from deep strength. The kind that only grows in women who have lived, who have given, who have stayed when others would have walked away. It's not the silence of giving up. It's the silence of choosing peace over chaos, of realizing that arguing, explaining, or proving herself never really changes anything. It only drains the soul. And when a woman reaches that place, the one where she knows her worth so well that she no longer needs to shout to be heard, something shifts, not just inside her, but around her. Men feel it, even if they don't fully understand it. There's something haunting about a woman who walks away without slamming a door. No accusations, no emotional outbursts, no dramatic exits. Just a calm, quiet departure, and it's that stillness that follows it. Let me tell you about Linda. She was 52 when she ended a relationship that had lasted 6 years. It was never defined, never committed, always in between. She waited, hoped, stayed patient until one day she simply didn't want to anymore. There wasn't a big fight, no long text messages, no begging him to choose her. She just stopped trying. She packed away her hopes gently, like folding an old sweater, not because they weren't beautiful, but because she knew they didn't fit anymore. And then she left. 3 months passed, silence. Then, one day, he reached out, not with flowers or a grand gesture, but with confusion in his voice. He said he hadn't been sleeping well, that something felt off, that her absence had become louder than her presence ever was. It wasn't because she blocked him. It wasn't because she made a scene. It was because, for the first time, he was alone with himself, and in that silence, he could finally feel what he had ignored. He told her, "You were the only person who made everything feel calm. Everyone else is just noise." But by then, Linda had already healed. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. She hadn't walked away to make him miss her. She had walked away to finally see herself. That's the thing about women who choose stillness. They don't need to convince anyone of their value. They don't stay where they aren't seen. And when they leave, it's not to punish, it's to protect. What most men don't realize until it's too late is that it's not the loud, dramatic exits that echo. It's the quiet ones, because those are the ones that come from strength, from knowing that being chosen should never come at the cost of self-respect. And when a man has been surrounded by women who chase, who plead, who explode when they're hurt, he doesn't quite know what to do when one doesn't. When she just becomes still, no ultimatums, no tears, just presence, then absence. And that absence speaks. It speaks in the way he checks his phone more than usual, in the way music sounds different, in the way he walks into a room and hopes maybe she'll be there, but she's not. Because she didn't leave to be begged back. She left because she finally stopped begging herself to stay. A woman like that doesn't just disappear. She becomes a mirror. She shows a man where he's lacking without ever saying a word. She reveals the difference between real peace and temporary pleasure, And that kind of truth is hard to shake. That's the quiet force I'm talking about. The kind that doesn't scream for attention but commands it anyway. The kind that doesn't chase love but draws it in without even trying. If you've ever felt like your silence was misunderstood as weakness, let me remind you, it wasn't. It was wisdom. It was power. And most of all, it was self-love. Because at some point, we stop asking, what can I do to make him see me? And we start asking, why do I keep waiting for someone who refuses to? That shift is everything. It's the moment we stop shrinking to stay and start expanding to grow. Linda didn't leave to make a statement, but she made one anyway. Not in words, not in anger, but in the quiet strength of a woman who finally realized she was the peace he couldn't find, not the problem he couldn't fix. And that's what stays in his mind long after she's gone. Emotional maturity is rare, and that's why it's irreplaceable. Emotional maturity doesn't show up in loud moments. It shows up in the quiet ones, the in-between moments, the misunderstood conversations, the times when everything in you wants to react, but instead you choose to breathe, to pause, to respond with grace. Most women I know didn't wake up one day knowing how to do this. They learnt it through experience, through heartbreak, through being misjudged and choosing not to prove themselves every single time. That's how emotional maturity is born, not in perfection, but in patience. And the truth is, men don't forget women like that. Because we live in a world where drama is expected, where emotions are either suppressed or explode without control. But when a woman knows how to carry her feelings without letting them carry her, something about that changes the entire energy of a relationship. Sophie was one of those women. She told me about a moment with a man she had been dating for nearly a year. Things were good, respectful, but one day he completely misread something she said, accused her of having hidden intentions, spoke to her in a way that stung. She could have argued, she could have defended herself, she could have called him out or walked away that very moment, but she didn't. Instead, she said this: I know what you're feeling right now isn't really about me, and I'm not going to fight you to believe me. I'll be here when you're ready to talk, from a place of clarity, not fear. Then she left his place. Not in anger, not to punish him, but to protect the space they had built. Because she knew that sometimes it's not about being right, it's about staying rooted. He told her weeks later that moment changed him. He had never seen a woman do that. He was used to yelling, accusations, tears, and somewhere along the way, he had started to believe that's what passion looked like, that chaos meant someone cared. But Sophie's calm that shook him. He realized she was the first woman who didn't need to win the argument. She didn't need to prove herself right or paint him as wrong. She gave him the space to face his own emotions without being dragged into them. And that space, that's what made her unforgettable. Emotional maturity doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you don't let those feelings control how you treat people or how you treat yourself. A woman who is emotionally mature knows that walking away isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's wisdom. She doesn't create distance to manipulate, she creates distance to stay true to herself. That kind of clarity is rare, and rare things are remembered. When a man meets a woman who can hold space for both truth and tenderness, he starts to question everything he thought he knew about relationships. He begins to unlearn the patterns he's always repeated, because now he's being asked to rise, not through force, but by example. And that's what most women don't realize. They don't need to raise their voice to be heard. They just need to raise their standards. Emotional maturity is not about being emotionless. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, when to stay and when to walk, when to stand firm and when to let go with love. And when a man experiences that, he doesn't just respect her, he rethinks how he shows up. He starts to realize that strength doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wears soft words and still eyes. He begins to see that trust isn't built in the loud declarations or grand gestures. It's built in the way she doesn't fall apart when things get hard, in the way she sets boundaries with kindness, in the way she stays rooted even when emotions run high. And the more he sees it, the more he understands. This kind of woman doesn't come around often. And if he's not careful, he'll lose her, not because she gave up, but because she knew when to stop giving. That's why emotional maturity is irreplaceable. Because you can't fake it. You can't perform it. You have to live it. You have to grow into it. And once you do, you start showing up in relationships with a different kind of energy. You no longer chase closure. You no longer react to prove your worth. You no longer stay in places where peace can't live. And that kind of presence, it lingers. It stays in a man's memory long after you've gone quiet. Because while others made noise, you made impact, not through control, but through consistency, through grace, through the quiet power of a woman who chooses how to love and how to protect herself at the same time. And that, more than anything else, is what makes her unforgettable. There's something powerful about a woman who knows exactly where she's going. She's not waiting for someone to rescue her, fix her, or define her worth. She wakes up each morning with a sense of direction, even if the path isn't always clear. And that quiet focus, that steady movement towards something meaningful, makes her magnetic. Not because she's trying to impress anyone, but because she's no longer trying to be chosen. She's already chosen herself. Karen is the kind of woman who didn't have the luxury of waiting around for life to happen. She was 47, raising 2 kids on her own, and building a small business from the ground up. She wasn't chasing love, she was chasing purpose. She had dreams, not just for herself, but for the life she wanted to create. A life built on values, stability, and freedom. So, when a man came into her world, she didn't rearrange her plans for him. She didn't shrink her goals to make him feel comfortable. She made space, but only if he could walk beside her. He wasn't used to that. He was used to women who waited, who paused their lives, held back their light, or softened their needs to keep him close. But Karen wasn't like that. She was already in motion. At first he was intrigued, then a little overwhelmed. He realized he couldn't just be there. He had to bring something real to the table: energy, intention, and growth. Because Karen wasn't building a relationship to escape her life. She was building a life that any relationship had to fit into. And that changed everything. A woman who has purpose doesn't give her time easily. She protects it, she values it, and that sends a clear message to any man who enters her space. Either rise to meet her or move out of the way. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. When a woman is focused on something greater than being loved, she becomes the kind of woman men remember forever because she's rare. She's not waiting by the phone. She's not obsessed with whether he likes her back. She's focused on building something she believes in. And if love comes, it has to come with respect. Men feel that. Even the most confident ones sense it. Some will step up. They'll be inspired. They'll grow because of her example. Others will quietly back away because her clarity forces them to see where they're still uncertain. But either way, she doesn't stop moving. She knows her time on this earth matters, and she's not going to spend it convincing someone to see her. She'd rather spend it becoming who she's meant to be. Karen didn't push that man away, but she didn't chase him either. She kept showing up for her business, her children, her healing. She didn't make space for inconsistency. She made space for partnership. And after a while, the man came back, not with empty words or half promises, but with clarity, with effort, with deep respect he hadn't had before. Because being near her made him realize something. She wasn't just a woman to love, she was a woman to grow with. And that meant he had to grow, too. That's what purpose does. It raises the standard without saying a word. It creates a filter. Not everyone gets through, but the ones who do, they don't come to take, they come to build. And that's what lasting love really looks like. Two people walking in the same direction, supporting each other without needing to control, lifting each other without losing themselves. So if you've ever felt like your independence made you hard to love, maybe it's time to reframe that. You're not hard to love, you're hard to mislead, and that's a gift. The right man won't be intimidated by your drive, he'll be drawn to it, because he won't just want to stand beside you, he'll want to match your pace. So keep building, keep dreaming, keep becoming. Because when a woman lives with purpose, she doesn't just attract love, she attracts the kind of love that's worthy of the life she's building, and that is unforgettable. Her standards are not walls, they are invitations. There's a difference between being hard to love and having standards. Too often, women are made to feel like asking for clarity, honesty, or consistency means they're demanding, like expecting real connection makes them difficult. But the truth is, standards don't push the right people away, they guide them in. Michelle learned that the hard way. She was 45 when she decided she was done explaining her expectations. She had spent years in relationships where she lowered her voice just to keep the peace, softened her needs so she wouldn't seem too much. And every time she did, a little part of her disappeared. Until one day she realized that shrinking didn't bring her love. It only brought her closer to people who couldn't meet her where she stood. So she stopped. She stopped apologizing for needing clear communication. She stopped excusing people who only showed up halfway. And most of all, she stopped hoping someone would magically change once they saw how good she loved them. Instead, she raised her standards, not to build walls, but to open a door, one that only the right man would walk through. At first, it was quiet. Fewer texts, fewer sparks, fewer people pretending to be more than they were, but slowly, something shifted. She met someone who didn't flinch when she asked the real questions, someone who didn't disappear when things got deep, someone who didn't call her too much for wanting something meaningful. And one night, while sitting across from him at dinner, he said something she would never forget. "You didn't make it hard to love you. You made it easy to receive." That moment changed her, because for the first time, she realized her standards had never been the problem. The problem was, she'd been offering premium love at a discount price. When a woman knows what she deserves, she doesn't settle for half effort. She doesn't stay in confusion just to avoid being alone. She doesn't keep making space for someone who keeps showing up empty. She becomes clear, and that clarity is magnetic. Standards are not ultimatums. They're boundaries shaped by wisdom, experience, and self-respect. And yes, they'll scare off the wrong people, but they'll also draw in the right ones, the ones who don't see your strength as a threat, but as an invitation. Because a man who's ready for real love won't run from your expectations, he'll rise to them. He won't ask you to be less. He'll be inspired to bring more. That's the beauty of standards. They don't lock people out. They help reveal who's truly meant to stay. Michelle's story isn't unique. So many women have been called high maintenance just for asking for the bare minimum, a returned call, a kind tone, a little effort. But what's really happening is this. When a woman stops settling, she stops giving her time to people who only want access, not connection. She stops being available to energy that drains her, and she starts protecting the peace she fought so hard to find. That peace isn't cold, it's sacred, and only those who respect it get close enough to feel it. If you've ever been told you're too strong, too direct, too independent, maybe those weren't flaws, maybe they were filters. And maybe the reason some people couldn't meet your standards is because they were never meant to. Real love doesn't ask you to dim your light. It meets you where you shine. It doesn't punish you for your clarity, it honors it. So if you're holding back, afraid that being fully yourself will scare someone off, ask yourself this: do I really want to keep people in my life who only stay when I'm smaller? Because the woman who knows what she wants doesn't need a crowd. She just needs one person who truly sees her. And she doesn't chase that. She attracts it by standing firm in who she is. So no, your standards are not the reason you're alone. They're the reason you'll never again settle for being almost loved. They're the invitation you send out to the kind of love that sees you, values you, and shows up with both hands open. And the man who's meant for you, he won't hesitate. He'll read that invitation and he'll say, finally, a woman who knows her worth. Because that kind of woman isn't just loved, she's respected. And respect is what makes love last. If peace, maturity, and purpose are what truly make us unforgettable, then why do so many women still feel the need to shrink just to be liked? Why do we lower our voices when we want to speak truth? Soften our needs to avoid being too much, pretend we're fine with less just to avoid being alone. Somewhere along the way, the world taught us that being calm meant being cold, that being clear meant being intimidating, that being grounded meant we must be closed off. But that's not true. A woman who stands in her peace is not distant. She's discerning. A woman who chooses stillness over chaos isn't disconnected. She's protecting what she's built.